Welcome to the show.
Hey,
Ain't Gonna Hurt Nobody podcast, episode 37.
37.
Our first, is this our first prime number episode? No,
Yeah.
17 is a prime number, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, as well as 11 and also 3.
Oh.
7. So.
Well, prime number episode, prime time.
It's a prime time for our love. Remember that song? That song was awesome. Janelle Monáe and Miguel. Oh, you tried me.
I did before he started hanging himself by his back, but that's a whole nother.
Miguel, damn.
Yeah, he's out
and
there.
And Janelle Monáe is like topless all the time.
Hey.
So it's like, what's going on, you guys?
I can't believe her. Oh, I'm so upset by that. Anywho, it's a perfect time. It's a prime time, though, to bring you a 4-part series. We want to start doing that to kind of group these topics together that we do. So we gonna try this, and it was important to get to you guys today. So important I came out without even getting my neck and beard line. So don't talk about me in the comments.
Dang, if you wouldn't have brought that up, nobody might not even notice.
People notice.
Look at dude's beard.
People notice. It's part of the brand now. But we wanted to do this. We wanted to do an episode about bridges, both building bridges and burning bridges, and we want to talk about them in the workplace and in your romantic and really your personal life. So So in episode 1 of our bridges series, we're going to talk about building our bridges at work. And I think, one thing we want to drop you with this fact, right? So the Golden Gate Bridge, one of the most iconic bridges in the world, it took almost 4.5 years to build. I think it's important to say that, right? It takes, as we all know, a long time to build any bridge or connection, but it takes an instant. For it to go away. So we're going to talk about the 5 ways that you build bridges when you think about your work and your professional life. So I think point number one, are these bridges that you build at work can be transactional, right? And I think it's important for us to know that because earlier we did an episode, early on in the podcast, we did an episode about the types of friendships that you can build, right? And just as a refresher, I have it pulled up on my Trust the Phone. Those were Aristotle's philosophies, right? But you had 3 types of friendships: friendships of utility, friendships of pleasure, and friendships of virtue. And I think when we talk about a bridge that you build can be transactional, it's almost a 1-for-1, or it might have to be a 2-for-1 exchange. But the idea is that the whole point of this bridge being built, that was a tongue twister, is it's the nature of you, it's the quid pro quo nature of that bridge.
I think, too, like, even though we're getting into our first point, which is, like, that bridges that you build at work are transactional, it's, like, you really do need to think about, like, what bridges you choose to build, because I would say, like, one difference between, like, the friendship one, it's, like, these people are your friends when you're trying to, like, have different friends, utility and and all that. But, like, in the scheme of work, like, some people, especially me, am not trying to, like, really have too many work friends. It's like you just trying to get in, get out, get your check, maybe learn, make some impact here and there, and then like go home to like your real friends and family. Like, so I think it's important when we're talking about building bridges. This isn't necessarily like having a work friend. This is more like creating those bridges that could like further along your career.
Correct, right? I mean, I think these types of bridges that you build from work, there does not have to be an emotional connection, and I think that's an important distinction.
Yeah, you don't have to hang out and all that. Yeah.
Correct. Or if you don't see that person, there's not a hole, in your life. And then when you see them again, it's not like something was filled, right? The relationship was built off of transaction. But that said, if you do grow tight with somebody as you're building a bridge, that's okay, because guess what? We're all human beings. And
that's like an added bonus. Correct. To me, that's like an added bonus. It's like, the main reason bridges are transactional is it's like at work, you're trying to get answers to questions, you're problem solving. And sometimes you can't solve particular problems on your own. Like you'll have to reach out to someone, and you might have to reach out to them like a lot. So it's important to like build strong bridges with the people as well. Yeah.
And I think it's important to know too that, when you build bridges, like people, if they have their remit at work, sometimes they might ask something of you that you're not required to do.
Correct.
And vice versa. But I think part of the reason we go out of our way, and we'll get into this a little bit more, is because it's for the sake of the bridge. It's for the sake of the utility that, doing something for this person can bring to you. And it is okay in a professional setting if you're very calculated of who and when you actually go above and beyond for, because there's nothing wrong with these types of bridges being built off a transactional relationship.
And I think one important component, because people will reach out to you trying to get answers or stuff. Some people, we all know, are incompetent with their job.
Yeah.
Sorry to say it, but it's just true. And people will like reach out to you, like basically trying to get you to do their job. And I think there's a fine line between like building bridges and like boundaries, and then also being that person that says no in the right way. Because if you say no in a negative, or you're kind of bogus, or however you say no to them, like you don't want to burn the bridge by telling them, no, I can't handle this. So I think it's like when you're building that bridge, it's okay to say no. That doesn't mean the bridge is like broken. It's just about how you choose to say it and how you choose to like interact with them, like moving forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that is a good segue into our second part with building bridges in the workplace. Be patient and play the long game. So I'm going to hit you guys with a stat. Like, did you know that, as you ascend in your career, that 80% of all jobs come through a connection? They come through a bridge. And it's not saying that it requires your best friend to give you a plug or even nepotism. But in a world where there's a lot of talented and capable people, it's these bridges that could help separate you from another candidate or somebody else with that same opportunity. Building these bridges can be the quickest path. You can still get there. You could still cross the Chicago River without any of the bridges that go over like a Michigan Avenue. You can still get across, but it's going to take longer. So you have to understand that, we started the show off saying it took 4.5 years to build the Golden Gate Bridge. I think it's important to know it might take you a while to build meaningful bridges, especially when you're right out of college and you're trying to figure out how to enter a field, or even if you're older and you start completely over to get into a new field, it can take you a long time to build these bridges. But the idea is if you've started to work on 10 bridges, ideally you can kind of complete most of them at the same time and then continue just to reinforce and make them stronger.
Yeah, and I think, too, that's such a good point. But it's also like it could take a long time to figure out where you could start building the bridge, because like I think a lot of people too, like when it says the 80% stat, I think a lot of people just assume like it literally is someone that I have to go to this happy hour like Black professional networking event and all this. I'm not certain if those are always the bridges that can get you jobs. Like sometimes they can, but sometimes it's like randomly volunteering. Doing volunteer work that's kind of still within your field. Like you never know who you might meet, or they'll remember you. Like in my job, I work, for education, and it's like we have all these like committees of teachers that will like help us with the work that we're trying to do. Like they'll give us their opinion and things like that. And then a lot of times the candidates that we're looking at for jobs will be like teachers who went above their job description to like help us do extra stuff. So it's like when you're thinking about like building bridges, it's like how can I kind of go outside of the scope of my work and make new connections, whether it's like volunteering, signing up for like if your job has like a policy review committee or something like that, and even if you sign up for affinity groups, like those type of little like outside of your job things are kind of the networks that like will get you jobs. Like I know for me, when I moved from the classroom to central office, dun dun dun, as a teacher, but I never had planned that out. But it was like from me presenting at like a conference, just like putting myself out here and presenting at a conference, like led me down the path to like changing my career, and that's like the networking was completely different. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't really going into that like, let me present at this conference so I can network with people so I can get another job. It was more like, hey, I really want to share this information that I have with the world. And it was like my passion, and it helped me to meet other people. So I feel like if you're just like in tune with your passions, and sometimes that's the patient part. Like it takes time for you to learn like yourself and your identity within the field line of work that you're doing, and then like branch out from there. Like it can take a while to really figure out the right bridges to take.
I think another
build, I should say.
and I think another important bridge that that goes within that is your resignation. I think a lot of people, oftentimes, if you're leaving a job and it's on your own accord, which it's not always is, but if you're able to leave a job on your own, I think it's important. How you resign and how you transition off that current role plays a long role into building and maintaining bridges. And that doesn't mean, now is a time where you give 200%, right? Because realistically, your head's already out of the game. Once you give that resignation, your head is out the game.
You long gone.
Yeah, but I think, we all understand the impact that it's going to have on an organization, especially if it comes out of nowhere that, it's about finishing strong, but just being respectful with how you leave. I think that's the last impression people might have of you, because you might not come across any of those people ever again, or you might not come across them for 10 or 12 years, because some of these bridges, it might take 10 years for you to actually cross it. And I think it's important to play that out. I'll tell a quick story. I left a job back in 2011. And then when I was in my transition period in 2019, I reached out to an old client contact. So not even a coworker, but just an old client contact, which we worked with each other frequently, but hadn't spoken a word to each other in over 9 years. I applied for a job and saw on LinkedIn that, they tell you if you ever apply for a job and you go on LinkedIn and you have a common contact, reach out to that person because they might be able to influence somebody. So I just reached out to this person, and they said, hey, I've actually left that company, but I'm still tight with HR, but let me throw you an assist and see if I can just call them. And within 24 hours, I got a call from HR at a job that got over 6,000 applications. I can tell you my application and resume would have never been read if I just didn't have that person I can reach out to. And even though we hadn't spoken 9 years, the last memory and the taste I left in his mouth was a good one, because he was willing to reach out and do something that he did not need to do, which took time out of his day just to get me in front of the right people. So I think that's an important thing. Like, be patient, play the long game. Don't just chuck the deuces and say F you.
And don't assume that people have chucked the deuces on you and forgot you, because people remember who they work with, who they seen, and then at the same time building off how you leave a job. I love that component. But too, it's like even in the beginning stages of applying for jobs, that can build bridges as well, because in my field, randomly, if you switch careers, like, principals want to know, and that can be a double-edged sword, because you could have a new job but not quite have it, and tell them like, hey, I'm applying for jobs, I've gotten to the second round, I may be leaving. Like, some principals want you to tell them ahead of time, even before you got the job, that you're interviewing, and that can build the bridge. Whereas in other situations, you could tell them too soon, and then now you don't have the job you interviewed for, and they have an attitude towards you because they think you're leaving, and now you kind of have burnt the bridge. But I think it's important. Yep. I think one really strong build bridger is like being informational, like giving people the information and letting them like do with it what they may. Like, they might be salty, but they'll like kind of respect you more for at least giving them like the heads up, because Absolutely. I've not told people, and I feel like that's burnt bridges more than, even though I was trying to protect myself in the scheme of it, but it's like, let them know like that actually will build bridges. Yeah, and we'll dive into that a little more on point number 5. So I think what we have is a good segue on to our third point in operating with integrity. And I think that's a big piece of this. So we talk about the resignation and how we're ready to chuck the deuces and tell everyone to kiss our ass. But at the end of the day, you're still getting paid. You're still getting the check to show up and perform. So, you need to live up to your end of the bargain. Much as we don't want to admit it, like, our employer is living up to their end by still continuing to pay you. They're going to cash out your PTO and all that other fun stuff. But you have to live up to your end of the bargain, and that's just working with integrity. So that's, in some ways, I remember when I left a job at City Colleges, I worked harder my last 2 weeks
because I was still doing my day-to-day task in addition to writing a thorough transition plan. So whoever picked up the baton would have a starting place, because I didn't walk in with that. And I was like, you know what, I can leave this place better than I left it, or at least leave this seat better than I left it by doing that. And I operated like with integrity, because I could have really coasted and chilled and, you know, not being concerned about anything.
Yeah, and I think too, like, that's so true. Is it's like when you're leaving a job as well, it's like, okay, like they're gonna give you like projects to wrap up. Like, do those projects. Like, I don't care how charismatic, funny, entertaining you are, fun to be around. Like, people remember if you did your work. Like, that's what they remember. They don't remember all that other stuff, and they like will like laugh and joke with you and all that, but they won't hire you again.
Yes.
Like, you have to, like, and sometimes just producing quality work is a bridge within itself. Like, I've encountered some people that's like, oh, I can't move up in the world. I can't move up in my career. You know, I'm not a people person. I'm not charismatic. I don't know. I don't have the right things to say, which is kind of negative, but that's neither here nor there. But still, I feel like if you feel like you're somebody who's not quite there but wants to get there, it's like, producing quality work is a build bridger, and that's like a silent bridge builder. You don't have to talk to people. Like, if you produce quality work and sometimes go above and beyond the work that was asked, and then also like meet the deadlines, and if you can't meet the deadlines, like say something, like that goes a long way without saying a word to build a bridge. It really does.
Yeah, I mean, people remember those that do them wrong, and you remember those who wrong you. And I think, you know, again, not delivering a quality work product, or not holding up to your end of a group project, or not holding up to the deadlines that, you know, then impact other departments. Those are all bridge builders. And people, again, even if you're not the best worker or the best at your job, people will always remember the effort and then the on-time delivery. I think a lot of times if you can deliver on time and put forth the effort, people can work with you through your shortcomings and work to help you improve, and as you want to climb that ladder. But all that, it's a level of integrity and a bar that you have to kind of set within yourself of the work product you want to deliver. I've been at plenty of jobs where I've started to mail it in, but even within me mailing it in, I was still delivering everything I needed to do on time, and it still had a level of excellence that allowed people to do their jobs. It's, if you ever hit that point that you're not allowing other people to work, then they'll remember that, and you're burning a bridge. And remember, a bridge could be as wide or as long as you can imagine. You'd be surprised how many people have siblings. They'll be sitting next to you. You have no idea that their sibling is working in the C-suite at another organization. They just never once mentioned it, and that can be your next job connect, or your next letter of recommendation, or heck, you might build a bridge to somebody that might help you get tickets or entry into an event that's sold out that you can't get into. You have to understand, like, again, these work type of relationships, it's okay for them to be like quid pro quo and be with utility, but I think the importance of operating with that integrity will help maintain and build those long after you left it. Golden Gate Bridge was built, it started in 1933. It's almost 100 years old. That bridge has been built, and there's maintenance to be done, but it's a strong bridge that's still standing, and it has more road traffic on it than it was ever intended. So.
That's so true, and it's like a staple of like American like culture, but that's neither here nor there. But I just think too, like when you're talking about building a bridge and that integrity component, it's like people remember hard workers. Like they remember, like, hey, she may not have been creative or whatever, but she was like a hard worker. Like she came early, she left late. Like I feel like even when we did that episode about the pandemic, it was like people remembered people who came in early, left late, even if they weren't like the best worker ever. Like I just think like that builds a stronger bridge than like anything that we've almost mentioned, like your work quality. And if your work quality is like low, I feel like it's time for you like to reflect, like maybe this isn't like the field for you. Like maybe you're not everybody finds joy in their work, but if like, I just don't feel like you have to be like cutthroat, like it's not like Game of Thrones. Like some jobs you might be in and it feels like, wow, this is like Game of Thrones. This is super competitive and cutthroat, but I feel like really the people who really build strong bridges are the ones who aren't like doing that type of stuff. Like when you're cutthroat, competitive, trying to like I feel like you burn more bridges than you build. And when you're just like a quality employee, you're friendly, you smile, you're consistent, you say good morning, you know, you might crack a joke here and there, but I mean, it's like, though that actually really build stronger bridges. You don't have to be like vindictive. You don't.
Correct. And I think, you know, when you start digging down into people, you meet people who are in a field and then all of a sudden they're just not, they're doing something completely different. It's not by mistake. Like, people will burn bridges, and you don't burn a bridge just by saying fuck you. Like, you can burn a bridge with your actions, your work quality, your again, like how are you operating within the agreement? Like, I am going to do X, you're going to compensate me with Y. And once you stop doing that, like, that'll completely sabotage you. And people, you know, we saw a lot of people get great jobs during the pandemic. We saw, you know, those people were hustling, you know, doing their thing, had a second job, and all of a sudden those jobs dried up. And so a lot of people built and burnt a bridge in a short amount of time and might never be allowed to be back into a field. We saw that the Great Resignation, when you had a lot of opportunity, a lot of options, and I think a lot of people were on that wave and then found themselves like, oh, crap, I have no place to go. And now they're like, they're out there looking, or they're pivoting into something else. So like you see it, people know it, and I think it's an important thing to know. Just operate with integrity.
Yeah, you want to be the person that people want to work with.
Absolutely.
Like, you want to be the person people like look forward to. Like, oh, I have a meeting with Joy. Like, okay, cool. We gonna get it done, and two, like, she's okay to work with. Like, it's a lot of really smart people out here that's like, no one looks forward to like working with them, even though they might be like brilliant and have great ideas. I feel like you build more bridges if you're like that person that people like want to work with, and you're easy. You don't have attitudes. You're easy to work with. I feel like a lot of people, they bring in all this like extra stuff that clouds their work quality, and they don't realize that it's like you coming 45 minutes late to every single meeting, like, you're not easy. That's what people remember. Like, that burns bridges that you don't even realize you're burning. Almost.
Well, it's not. You're not even burning.
Yeah,
like
yeah. I don't think you're
built it.
Yeah,
like,
you never built it.
You're not building or reinforcing or helping the structural integrity of the bridge. So, I think all of that goes into our fourth point, which is sacrifice. Right. In order to build a bridge, you have to sacrifice, and that means doing stuff you don't want to do for the sake of maintaining this bridge. You know, I think a lot of times, you know, it's easy to understand, like, this is what's in front of me and what I'm supposed to do. But sometimes you have to give of yourself, whether that's your time or talent. You need to do that in order to strengthen and connect these professional bridges that you build. Again, you never know where that person will be or 10 years or in the future. But people remember the no's. Everybody remembers the no's that they were told, and how that can impact them. You have a lot of people who said, I am not going to do this, or a lot of people who consistently showed up late, really without rhyme or reason, but within showing up late, they didn't deliver. It's one thing to show up late and you're delivering, but when you show up late and not do it, that means you're not making the sacrifice both ways. You're not making the sacrifice to get up earlier, to catch whatever bus or train, or to pay for what parking, to get here on time, and or you're not burning it on the back end to do the work to make sure that you're maintaining, or if it's a volunteer opportunity, if it's a networking opportunity or an event, like, you're not doing your end to make that bridge work.
Yeah, it's like at my job, they randomly were like, you know what? We're all going to be in the Bud Billiken parade. Yeah. I was just like, oh, damn, I got to, no offense to the Bud Billiken. It's the second largest parade in the country. So it's an awesome parade. I'm just saying, like, I'm on a Saturday morning. It wasn't my first choice, but I think, like, there's a matter of sacrifice where you're like, you know what? I'm going to get up at 8 a.m. I'm going to wear this back to school bash T-shirt. I am going to walk this over 3 mile parade in the summer, and like, I'm going to get it done. And like, people remember, like, the people that just show up, like it's sacrifice you do have to make, but sometimes you have to weigh it out. Like, could this pay off for me in the end? And if so, that might be worth building that bridge. Like at that parade, it was like the superintendent was there, like large, like people you want to meet and want them to see you might be there. So even though you're sacrificing, it's like you still need to think like, what could be the benefit of me making this sacrifice every once in a while? But it's a difference between making a sacrifice and doing somebody else's work. And then, like, what's the payout? Like, you need to think about when you are doing these sacrifices, is there a payout for me? And that also might help build further bridges.
Yeah, I think, too, like, you know, again, a big part is your time, right? When people need you to write a letter of reference, that can take a ton of time. Like, when people need you, you know, you have now, I provided references for people, and you get a website, and it took me 20 minutes just to fill out all these forms on the website. Then it was a 10-minute phone call after that, right? But that was the sacrifice I'm going to make for a bridge that I built, right? And I might never get anything in turn. There might not be any reciprocity there. But the fact is, when I need to ask that of someone else, I know what it takes, and I understand like the importance of it getting done. So I think, again, sacrificing your time or talent. There's been several times where, you know, in my field, a lot of ad agencies work with ad councils, and those are pro bono clients who don't pay for times and services which are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. But it's something that agencies do, like with their talent. To, you know, they're asking their talent, the individuals, to use their talents to helping these noble causes come to life. Like anytime you see an ad from the ad council, that's usually like in the form of a PSA. Like you have people who have full 9 to 5 jobs, which are really 8 to 6s, who are then taking time out of their day to deliver those. I did one,
and that's for free, right?
Correct.
Right.
I did one for what was it, H1N1 when that was big, and I had my full 9 to 5, and I had to find a way to still get that done. But it was, you know, it was a use of my time and talent, and best believe my leadership remembered that, and that just helped strengthen that bridge.
Yeah.
Bridge that was already built got strengthened. And you want people, and I'm looking at this camera for this one, like you want to be known as that person they can turn to. Like when something comes up and it needs to get done, you want to be known as that closer. And you do that by constantly building that bridge and adding another layer of reinforcement under it, adding more steel, adding more concrete. So every time that you need to every time they need to cross that bridge, they can go any number of ways, but you want them to come to you because they know that's the strongest and most reliable. And I think there's a fine line between that and being a sucker. I think the one thing is, you know, a lot of times, you know, when you look for leadership and management opportunities, they want to know that you're able to deliver above and beyond your job. They want to know that you're not only performing your job with proficiency, they want to know that you could pick up and still go above and beyond and get paid. And if you ever reach that point where that bridge hasn't netted you something, guess what? You can take that bridge and take it someplace else because you've built skills. Like, remember, like, at a job, building the skill set and a repertoire, those are all marketable things that might not compensate you at the job you're sitting in, but someone else will.
So true.
I think our fifth and final point is, you know, something Joy started to hit at earlier. So that's being an ally. Joy, you want to dive into this one?
I think and this one's pretty short, but it's just primarily just when you really do need to think about who you're building bridges with. I think sometimes that gets conflated with people being like, oh, you're cutthroat, you're political. But working in a job, there is strategy. It doesn't have to be negative strategy, but you should have like strategy and thought behind like what you're doing. Like it's like a chess game. Every move does matter. Like this is your career. This is your life. So like when you decide to build a bridge, like make sure you're an ally and that like you're someone, and I think that goes to the same thing kind of you're saying, like you're resourceful, like when they come to you, you actually have answers, and if you don't have an answer, you're willing to be like, I don't know, let me get back to you, and then you actually do get back to the person. Or you're like a person that either is providing important information that they might not know that they need, and on the other hand, being an ally is maybe you're that person that doesn't tell the information that people don't want shared. That can make you an ally. Like, for instance, if this is just an example, but maybe you're in a job and somebody is like, I'm going to leave. I'm leaving. I'm going to resign, but I have all these vacation days. I'm not going to tell anyone until this date. Maybe it's like a long period between when they actually tell people they're resigning. Like, if you're going to be an ally, you don't tell people, even if they're like, where is this person? Like, you shouldn't be telling them like, oh, I think they're quitting, or I think, like, you had to really be like wise about what you say and who you say it to and who you don't say it to, because that can also build a bridge of like trust. Like, if somebody is telling you something and it might be like really either important, it could be scandalous information, whatever it is, but you got to be wise about who you tell and who you don't tell. And when you tell it, that builds bridges.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we don't have a lot of time left, but we don't necessarily have a 6 point. But I think the one thing we want to dive into with building bridges is, there's a level of disappointment that just comes with building bridges.
Yeah.
Again, we started off by saying these work bridges are mostly transactional. People tap into them when they need to. And oftentimes it might be a time that's inconvenient for you, or when you need to cross your bridge, they might not be ready for you. So I think it's important to know that disappointment will come while building these work bridges. While we're highlighting the importance of them, like, disappointment will come. And this can look like a couple of different things, right? People could leave your bridge. You could be working with someone for a long time, and, when the time comes for you to reach out and connect, they might go silent on you. And that could be any number of reasons. They could just be absorbed in their own life. They might be going through their own shit. They also might have found a stronger, better bridge than what you were providing to them, and they might easily leave you for that. I think there's something also to say about ambition. You can be building a bridge with someone, and their ambition, they have no problem not operating with integrity, or, like Joy was just saying, withholding information from you, or taking information you told them in confidence and weaponizing it for their own purpose at the sake of burning that bridge. I think it's important to understand that people in transaction relationships are looking to better their ultimate position. That's how capitalism is built. So dropped a lot on you here with this idea of building professional bridges, but just to go through points 1 through 5 again. 1, these bridges can be transactional, and that is okay. Number 2, you have to be patient and play the long game. Number 3, you need to operate with integrity. Hold up your end of the bargain. Do what you say and say what you do. Stand on it. Number 4, you're going to need to sacrifice. So there's going to be stuff you don't want to do, but you need to do it for the sake of maintaining that bridge, even if it's taking of your time and your talent and sometimes even your resources, your money. Don't be completely closed off to it, because you might need that same thing going the other way back. And then number 5 is be an ally, right? That's being a good gatekeeper. That's being transparent, making sure you're sharing and getting information in a timely fashion, or not.
That's true. So, yeah, that sums it up. I mean, I think we knocked this out the park. So
we did. So, Joy, what's something that you wish you would have known about? I'll take it. Let's do this. What's something you wish you would have known about building bridges?
I think primarily something that I wish I would have known was the importance of how you leave positions and how that could build a bridge. I've been in since 2005, give or take, working, and I just remember, like, my mom was just like, when you quit, you quit. Like, it was just more of a, like, F these people, like, when you're done with the job. And in hindsight, I never realized, like, you never know where people who you work for, where their path might lead. Because I remember one time I quit a job, and then, like, years later, that person was, like, the assistant principal at a potential school our daughter could have went to.
Absolutely.
And it's like, you got to think about what type of employee are you while you're there. Even if you hate the job, it's important to be, like, a quality employee, because that's going to build you the skills that you need when you do get the job that you really enjoy and like. So it's just I think building bridges really starts internally, like, with you and, like, your mind. I feel like that's what I learned. It's important to be like a quality employee no matter where you are, and that alone builds bridges.
Absolutely. One thing I wish I would have known about building bridges is that people are ultimately going to be in it for themselves, right? The transactional nature for things, like people will put themselves first. If you tell somebody about a job that you're potentially applying for, they will apply for that same job and there's everything in their power to do it. Like, be careful with how you move. Like, people they're vipers out here. So you have to just understand, like, as you build these bridges and they're transactional, they're just that. Don't let the false sense of just being around somebody or a situation all the time with friendship and relationship. Be very calculated with how you move. Something I wish I would have known, just be more calculated and understand that people are going to be out for themselves first. So watch your toes. We dropped a lot on you here on episode 37, but Ain't Gonna Hurt Nobody podcast. We out.
Peace.
Peace.